We know that e-cigarette rates, or vaping, has increased by 78%. I'm sorry, I can't see that very well. You probably can't either. 78% from 2017 to 2018. That's a report that was just released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention just this fall. And then of the e-cigarettes, or the electronic nicotine delivery systems, Juul, which is by far has the largest market share on the planet, 63% of Juul users don't even know there's nicotine in the product that they're inhaling. So right here in Miller County, among high school kids, we know that almost 13% of the kids in Miller County use tobacco products. And then, of course, of adults within the county, 1 in 4 smoke. So we know that of all these kids that are using e-cigarettes today will be addicted to nicotine by the time they graduate from high school. And so that's unacceptable. We have to do something about it. So we as a coalition reached out to Ginny and Tobacco 21 so that we could learn more about that particular policy. And she really opened her eyes, and so we want to share this information with you guys. So we've recruited some youth from the community here to do the presentation for us.
Almost half of all Miller County youth think that it's easy to obtain tobacco, and as a student at the high school, I especially know this is true because you see it every day with these kids. Upperclassmen, most of the time when you're a senior, you're 18 years old and you can legally buy tobacco in Eldon. So if you're friends with an upperclassman, he can just buy it for you, and you, as an underclassman, can have access to all the tobacco that you want because you have that older person in your life. Over 1 in 5 youth purchase attempts in Eldon resulted in the retailer selling to the youth under age 18, which is double the national average. And Eldon is a tobacco swamp according to the FDA.
So as we heard, e-cigarette rate use has really gone up. So, for decades we were actually winning in public health and reducing tobacco use. But starting in 2011, it was really a game changer, and the e-cigarettes came onto the market. And so from there, we've seen a trajectory back upwards again. And last year, 3 million high school students across the country were daily users of e-cigarettes.
So nicotine addiction in the youth brain is a little bit more scary than for the adult brain because the young brain is still developing. So when young people use tobacco products, their brains become addicted a lot more easily and stay addicted for longer because it happens during that development stage. So the part of the brain that nicotine affects is the part that is in pleasure. And so when brains are used to getting nicotine, it makes the tolerance for pleasure a lot higher. So without the nicotine product, they can't feel pleasure without it. So that's why this is a dangerous substance for young brains, because it affects while they're still developing.
And it actually changes that receptor in the brain which is exposed to nicotine. So it's the one thing that we know physically changes the form and structure of the brain. And oftentimes you'll hear that youth will say, well, I'm using no nicotine e-cigarettes, or you saw the Juul numbers. But what we know based on CDC testing is that about 99% of e-cigarettes, disposable, and 99.7% of the rechargeables, so that'll be your Juul, actually contain nicotine, even when they claim that they're nicotine-free. Because the FDA doesn't regulate e-cigarettes, so they can make the claim. They now say that they have to have the statement on there, but youth and the general public are really being misled. And it might just have trace amounts of nicotine in it, but it's enough to get them addicted, and it'll keep them addicted for a lifetime.
So similar to what Ginny said, 63% of users don't know that there's nicotine in the Juuls. A lot of excuses you hear kids say are, well, it's just chemicals, it's just nicotine, it's not going to affect my body. They don't see the long-term effects.
But what we know is that the e-cigarettes have all the same volatile organic compound and cancer-causing chemicals that we saw in traditional cigarettes. They also contain a chemical called diacetyl. Some of you back in the 80s might remember Popcorn Lung. The popcorn factory here in the state of Missouri was actually had the chemical diacetyl in their popcorn flavoring, and it was lung, that same chemical is found in the flavoring of e-cigarettes.
So, as many of you know, or may have seen, companies like Juul and e-cigarette companies target youth. So I am 15 and I have seen many ads, like it's a daily thing for me to see an e-cigarette ad. So they are attracting the high school age.
I'd like to throw out, my age gap between myself and these girls is not a whole lot. I'm 23 and I did not know that this product existed. I started talking with Ginny about it and was in a meeting, and that's the first time I heard about it. I was shocked. So even a 23-year-old is too old to be targeted by these ads. It doesn't show up in my social media, doesn't show up in my Snapchat, doesn't show up on my Facebook. They're targeting really young kids, very purposefully, and my age is not even a part of that range.
Like Reece just said, the e-cigarette ads reach nearly 4 in 5 U.S. and middle school, U.S. middle and high school students. So it's a daily thing that you see. You see it all over social media. You see it just everywhere, and they make it appear as if it's cool or it's a positive thing to have in your life.
So in 2009, the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act passed. It finally set a federal age of 18, but it gave the states explicit authority to make stronger laws. And in the state of Missouri, we have explicit language in our state statute that says that local municipalities can make more stronger laws on age restrictions. It also called for a study to say what would the impact be if we raised the sale age from 18 to 21. And what they found was that the Institute of Medicine did a 5-year predictive modeling. This report is over 450 pages long. And they found that raising the age of sale from 18 to 21 would reduce youth initiation in our primary target, those 15 to 17-year-olds, by almost 25%. And those older and younger by 15%. So what we know is this is the policy that actually prevents youth from ever starting the product. So Needham, Massachusetts was the first place to pass it. It's a suburb of Boston. You can literally walk across the street and be in another suburb. And once they passed it, nobody really thought it would have much effect. But what their youth smoking rates showed was that there was a 50% reduction in high school smoking rates. So we've seen similar data across the country, and the reason why this works is exactly what the high school students are presenting, that once you have the 18-year-old in the high school, everybody in the high school has access to the product. So in the state of Missouri, 80% of our high school seniors are 18 before they graduate, and 20% are 19. So moving that sales age up just really removes the social circle, the access point, the supplier of tobacco products. It also makes it more difficult for a 15 to 17-year-old to pass off as a legal purchaser. So you guys heard on this slide earlier that 1 in 5 youth that make a purchase attempt under the age of 18 in a convenience store in Eldon are successful at buying that product. You guys have one of the highest rates of violation in the state of Missouri, so over 20%. So we know that your convenience stores are selling to youth. Tobacco 21, the idea of this time has come. So at the end of 2013, New York City adopted this policy, and it's really when the eyes of the nation became upon it. It ended up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I live in Columbia, Missouri. I have a school board member who gets the Wall Street Journal every morning, and he read it, and he said, I want to get tobacco out of my high school, and I think this is the way. And I'm a former city council member, so he came to me and he said, I want Columbia to consider this. And so we were the 5th state to have a local policy. We now have local policies in our local communities in 23 different states across the country. We have 425 cities and counties that have adopted Tobacco 21. In just those 5 short years, we've covered 30% of the nation's population. So it's a policy that's moving very fast, but specifically in the state of Missouri, we have 40% of our state population covered with over almost 20 local policies. So we know that this is a policy that works here in Missouri. It's been done many times, and a lot of communities are considering it right now, especially with the Juul epidemic that's happening in the schools. So Chicago's data that we got 1 year after implementation showed a 36% decrease in their cigarette and e-cigarette use rates in those 18 to 20-year-olds. And California went statewide, so we have 6 states that have gone statewide. So Oregon, California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Maine, and New Jersey have all gone at a statewide level. And so in California, their violation rates, so their FDA violation rates of those minors who could go in and buy were at 10% prior to Tobacco 21, and after Tobacco 21, their violation rates dropped down to 5.9%. So less youth had access to the product bypassing Tobacco 21. We know that polling data shows that Tobacco 21 is very broadly supported by the general population, and I've had Missouri-specific data as well that shows, by far majority support for Tobacco 21. This was the social climate survey that was conducted in 2013. The CDC conducted studies in 2014, 15, and 16, all showing that across all demographics, even current and former smokers, by far majority support Tobacco 21, and this crosses all age demographics as well. It's broadly supported by most national health organizations, but even American vets endorsed Tobacco 21 at a national level. The military has made a very clear statement that they support Tobacco 21. And oftentimes many of the business community members do too. What we know is that a smoker costs a business an average of $5,800 more per year than a non-smoker. And tobacco has a huge toll economically in our state. So there's definitely opposition to this policy. Not everybody agrees. The most common is a civil liberties argument. If you're old enough to go to war and you're old enough to vote, fight for our country, then you should be old enough to buy tobacco products. We regulate a lot of things over the age of 18. So you can't buy alcohol until you're 21. You can't gamble until you're 21. You can't even rent a car or a hotel room. All those things are far less risky than tobacco products. We want the most dangerous thing for our youth to be regulated at the same. I also say that, if 50% of our young men and women who served our country died serving, we would think twice about sending them to the military, but 50% of tobacco users will die of a tobacco-related illness. And again, the military has repetitively expressed their support. When Hawaii passed this at a statewide level, we weren't sure what the federal military bases would do because they don't have to comply with state law, but all bases within Tobacco 21 areas have raised the age to 21. So we know that the military is a strong supporter. The other big argument is that it will decrease city sales tax revenue for city income. So the 18 to 20-year-old is not the one that purchases the majority of the sales. Only 2% of the sales goes to the 18 to 20-year-old. And Missouri has the lowest tobacco tax in the nation, and e-cigarettes are not taxed as a tobacco product. So they bring in no additional revenue. The e-cigarette industry is still claiming that they're a cessation product. We know that for every one adult who transitions exclusively from traditional cigarettes to e-cigarettes only, we have 80 youth joining into the tobacco and nicotine market by getting addicted through e-cigarettes. So we don't have flavored cigarettes anymore, but the FDA has not regulated flavors for e-cigarettes. And so the e-cigarette industry has very much mirrored what they did in the past and really making this fruit flavored and look like the things that youth would use.
So one of the biggest aspects of Juul that makes it more dangerous than other e-cigarette products in the past is the way that the nicotine is absorbed into the blood. So this graph in the top left corner, the bottom part, which is a dark blue, shows the absorption rate and how long it stays in the blood of a typical e-cigarette. And then the yellow is what a normal combustible cigarette would look like absorption-wise. And Juul is the closest product that has come to the absorption rate and the length that it stays in the blood than any other product. However, combustible cigarettes still are better. And so people will start using Juul, young kids will start using Juul, but they go through withdrawals, and this is why we hear about kids in high school that can't last through even in whole class without having to go to the bathroom or try to smoke it without the teacher seeing them. It's because it's not lasting in their bloodstream as long. So then that makes it a lot easier for them to realize that a traditional cigarette will last longer and hold that fix longer. So then they switch over to those products, making a lifelong addict of nicotine and tobacco products. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see a graph. The red line that kind of spikes up to the right is Juul. So Juul came on to the scene in December of 2015, which is key because no new e-cigarette products were allowed as of January 2016, so they came out in the nick of time. They haven't been around very long, and they own 80% of the tobacco industry e-cigarette shares, and they're a $15 billion company. So this calculator shows how many youth in the city of Eldon would be saved if we passed this policy. 28 youth that would have begun smoking products, tobacco products, that would have died because of tobacco-related illnesses would be saved if this was passed in Eldon.
So, kind of into the nitty-gritty of the details of the policy, we want to make sure that all tobacco products are included, right? So e-cigarettes, traditional cigarettes. We set the sale age at 21. In order to enforce this, we created a tobacco retail license, but there's not one at the state level, so you can do that at a local level. We often encourage like a health department to help with the enforcement, doing systematic compliance checks. It's really important to actually check the retailers to make sure that they're not selling to youth, because if you don't, they won't follow the rules. We like to see a graduated penalty on the retailer with the ability to suspend or revoke the license if they continue to violate the policy. Really, we try to make sure that the youth is not the one penalized for being addicted, but that penalty is really going on the retailer who's making a profit off of selling a deadly addictive substance to our kids. We want to see that the retailer is doing an age verification. In the state of Missouri, the language is very loose. It says if the purchaser appears to be of age, you don't need to check their ID. So really making sure you have a strong age verification signage, educating the retailers that this policy is going into place, and typically it takes a couple months after adoption to be fully in effect so that you have time to let the retailers know and get the license issued.
Okay, so today's teenager is tomorrow's potential regular customer, and the overwhelming majority of smokers first begin to smoke while they are still in their teens. This is true. I see kids every day going out to the parking lot today. They try to do it in class. They often pull their shirt up like this and release the smoke so that teachers don't see it.
Okay, Mayor, you said you had questions. We're ready for them.
I know that the city can come in and implement an ordinance if all of them decide to do so. But how about the county? How can they impact that?
So since our health department is actually a health center ran by a board of directors, there's a statute that gives them the authority to pass countywide ordinances.
Okay.
So I mean, it's conceivable that in the future sometime that we would consider a countywide policy.
And the reason I think that it needs to be that personally is because you drive 2.5 miles out of Eldon, the city of Eldon, and people can purchase. So the impact, I think, would have to be in a countywide basis.
And yes, I agree. I hope that at some point in time it is countywide, but we're really encouraging that the cities kind of take the lead and just show the rest of the community that that this is important to them as well. The county health department is committed to helping you with this, to make it a zero cost to the city, so we can help fiscally provide resources to help put together the ordinance, put together the protocols and the policies, take care of the education component for the community and the retailers, develop signage, distribute the signage, and just work with you guys on how we want to roll this thing out, as far as licenses and enforcement and that kind of thing.